And that's why
What?
they all stayed at the bar and laughed it off. Oh, you're just joining us, folks. Sorry you missed the joke.
No, I didn't have any joke. I'm not that funny. So, welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades.
Welcome, welcome.
This is Sir Eric of Eastman.
I like
or
that title better.
The Eastman Meister, as they call him.
Do they call
No,
him that?
nobody calls you that. I just made it up.
What do they call him that? Is that after the Burgermeister, Meister Burger?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
right. And our guest tonight is the Honorable Jane Cormier, who is running for Executive Council.
Yes, sir.
Because the legislature, you did, how many terms in the legislature were you with me?
I just did one with you.
You did one, which
Yeah.
was more than enough to...
Oh, I learned a lot, and I really enjoyed it.
You
Yeah.
did. Isn't it amazing how much you learn?
Absolutely.
Like
It's
the first 2
remarkable.
years are amazing.
Yes. Yes.
Because you just the flood of information, how things work is pretty
Eye-opening.
It
wicked.
feels like a version of law school, just
Does it?
a practicum.
Wow.
The whole
I
2
haven't done
years.
law school, but I'll take your word for it.
All right.
So you're running for Executive Council in which district?
District 4.
District 4.
Yes, sir.
That is currently occupied by whom?
Chris Pappas.
Chris Pappas. And
Yes.
he is not running?
Well, he is running for Congress now.
Ah.
And so he's off to larger pastures, dare I say. And so now the seat is open. And I suspect that there'll be a lot of people wanting to come in and play.
Who was there before Pappas?
Yeesh, that's a good question. I have no idea.
I like to
No,
stump
well,
the
I
guest
think he's
first.
been there for
That's
3
always fun.
terms, so
What?
it's been a while. I think he's done it. This is his 3rd term, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken. So he's
No,
been-
I just wondering if it's that strong of a Republican and or Democrat, or is it kind of split down the
Well,
middle?
you know what? If you look at the
'Cause
demographics,
he had pretty good name recognition, so that
Yes, he
kind of
does.
takes a lot of the...
absolutely. He has very good name recognition. But if you look at the political, how they draw the line politically, I think 18, if I'm not mistaken, of the 19 communities are Republican by +1 to +5.
Oh,
Okay. However, Manchester, of course, is
what percentage
more,
of the district is that?
I don't know how much the percentage is.
In terms of
But there's-
population.
Yeah.
yeah, population, I'm not sure.
Or
But I know
votes.
that there's 19 communities,
Right.
and Manchester's, of course, the biggest one, and the one that does lean, left of
Is it
center.
the entirety of Manchester?
I believe so.
Oh.
Yeah, you mean within the
Yeah,
whole...
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
absolutely. It's the entire...
Okay,
Yeah,
so
community.
Manchester's going to be the bulk of your votes then.
Yeah.
So doing this show should cost you at least dinner,
Oh, my. Okay.
right?
No, listen, that's
No?
Broadway. We
What?
can't say
Oh,
that.
yeah, no, I didn't mean it that way.
We have to be nice.
Well, you didn't mean it that way, right?
No,
Yeah,
no,
of
of
course
course
He was
not.
being
No.
flippant.
Flippant, yes. I got a lot of that
That's-
going on.
Fairly standard
okay.
for Gary.
So,
So,
what the heck? I tried to blackmail Howie Zibble he's the liaison between the state Supreme Court and the legislature.
oh, did you?
Oh, yeah.
This is going out live.
You do
Yeah,
you really
so
want to
no,
say
no,
that?
This is awesome.
No.
This is
I will
awesome.
see your blackmail and raise you
I will
one
raise
episode
you-
of extortion, which I'd like to confess
No,
to.
he had a bill-
That's for another show.
He had every 2 years, and you're probably familiar with this. I don't know what committee you were on.
Resource and recreation.
Yeah, they probably had a similar thing. Most committees in the House, when you first get elected, whichever department that you tend to work with,
Yeah.
they invite you over and try to butter you up and make you become best friends.
Yes.
It's all part of the scam. But anyway, so the Supreme Court usually invites members of the Judiciary Committee over to the state Supreme Court. They put on, food and stuff like that.
Wow,
And,
okay.
and you get to talk to these the Chief Justice and the other accomplices, the other men in black robes, dresses, whatever it is. And so anyway, they tried to do that this term, but every time they tried to schedule it, there was like a snowstorm.
No.
So Tuesday, yesterday, is that yesterday? Yesterday,
Yes.
Howie Zibble was asking us to expedite a bill really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I says, well, Mr. Zibble, you want this rather rapidly, right? He says, yes. Well, I seem to remember that Usually we get to go over to the Supreme Court and have really nice sandwiches and stuff, and we didn't get them this term.
Mm-hmm.
So how much does it mean to you that this be done?
And what did he say?
He just ignored me
I
mostly.
see. Okay, there you go.
Oh, I love me.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway.
Use phrases like, I'm sure we could come to some kind of arrangement here, Mr. Zipple.
No, he said nothing, so he's in the clear.
Yeah, luckily.
Yeah, no, what's-
Luckily.
what was it- what
and
was
he's
the-
confessed it now on live TV.
Yes.
What was the one they used to use in like the mafia ones? I have a deal that you can't. What is that?
Can't snose on it.
No.
Can't
Make you an
lose,
offer
can't
you can't
refuse.
refuse. An offer
Yeah.
you can't
Oh, my.
refuse. Yeah, that's it.
Where'd that come from?
Yeah, I know it's weird. It's
Paul's our
haunting.
voice of God.
So yeah,
Down
so
here.
so anyway, enough with that silliness. If you are elected, you will be representing Goffstown, Manchester, and what
Yep.
other many communities?
Communities. So we have Loudon, Bedford,
All the way up to Loudon.
Lee, Bedford, Goffstown, Nottingham, Pittsfield, Manchester, Northwood, Auburn, Bow, Barrington, Candia, Chichester, Epsom, Deerfield, Hooksett, Londonderry, and Allenstown. And Pembroke.
And Pembroke.
Cannot forget Pembroke.
That's a diverse piece of
It
geography.
really is. It really is.
Is that how is that like kind of one of these like hot dog type districts or?
No, I think it's a great district.
No, I mean the way it
Very
extends
interesting.
out all the
Oh,
way
yeah,
to
well,
Loudon and then back to here.
It does, and it goes up toward Concord, and then over to the east, and then back down to the south. Yeah, but I mean, it's about 266 per district.
Right.
So
266.
266,000
Yep.
Per district.
Yeah, residents per district. So
You've got a microcosm, in other words, a small version of New Hampshire in that one district, don't you?
very diverse one.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I mean, and I love fundraising and being with people and doing events because you really do get to know the people and you get to know your issues pretty well by constantly, being in there. And I can't wait to get into these communities because I think we're going to have a good time with it.
All right, so for the viewers, most people, I think, every 2 years vote for executive counselor and probably have no clue what that is or what they do.
Right?
It could be dog catcher for all they know. So, could you explain to
Sure.
the viewers what an executive council person actually does?
Well, the executive council works in the executive branch with the governor, and they pretty much handle the affairs of state within the executive branch. And this is such a historical group because it goes all the way back to colonial times when it was put in to sort of be a watchguard to make sure that the governor, who had tremendous power, I believe back then they called him president of the state.
Right.
Governor Wentworth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
president. He was president. And so, when you read about it, that you can tell that they were really concerned that this person held so much power. And so they brought this member council together to sort of be the watchdog for the citizenry. And since then, it has stayed, and they take care of a lot of the business that needs to happen within the state. Things like infrastructure and making sure that contracts come and go, that influx and outflux, is done supposedly in a very fiscal way. I chuckle because, fiscally conservative way, when you read about it, even on the website, nh.gov has a lot of information about the Executive Council. Where is it? They put the wording in that just makes you smile because it was like written by fiscal conservatives that today, depending on who you're speaking to, they just, they don't want to spend any money and they're not realistic and we have to have business as usual kind of thing, right? And yet you read this description and it was like written by the most conservative, fiscally sound person. So where is it here? They talk about Executive Council approves, Executive Council serve as watchdogs of the state treasury to ensure state departments do not spend more than was authorized by the legislature, nor allocate funds for items or services which the legislature has not sanctioned. And they are in charge of making sure that the executive branch of state government is fiscally conservative and above reproach. That's what it says.
Above reproach.
That,
Is there
that
anybody
exact
that's-
language is right in there, that's part of the charter.
Unbelievable. Yeah, absolutely. And when you stop to think about that, and how important it is that the taxpayers' dollars that are flooding to fund our state, one sometimes wonders, are they really being fiscally responsible all the time? You know, when these projects are happening or when monies are being spent. That's the job of the Executive Council, is to try to make sure that those things are happening, that we're watching out for the citizens' money.
So if the state needs a cajillion more widgets,
Yeah.
it has to go to the Executive Council and the governor for approval for that expenditure.
Right, the contract goes out, or is supposed to go out to bid. And from what I understand, this is where it can get a little dicey, because there seems to be a trend where bidding isn't happening on contracts, that, one company or organization, whatever, is being used as like a sole-sourced
Right.
person for that. The whole intention is to try to have competition within the state to allow as many players as possible to bid on these contracts. That is not always happening.
Planned Parenthood gets a huge contract every 2 years
Yes, they do.
From the state.
from the state.
From the federal and
I
the
will
state.
tell you,
My goodness.
that vote colored my view of Chris, what Sununu do we got now?
Chris,
Right, Chris
Today would be
Sununu.
Chris.
Okay. It completely colored my view of him.
Really?
Because I was there for both votes. Mm-hmm.
Are
And
you talking when he was in the E EC?
when he was in the Executive Council, okay, so he's sitting there
Mm-hmm.
at the first vote. And it was right after the news hit that the Planned Parenthood was actually selling, were being very careful of how they dissected a child inside the womb,
Right.
so that they could use the parts and resell them to
make money.
research, to make
Yes,
money.
Indeed.
All right? Absolutely clear. If you watch the full videos or the edited videos, the only difference being one was shorter, but it still had exactly the same
Indeed.
key points.
Information, yes.
Information. So this was right after that. I think it was a December, January timeframe. And Chris Sununu was sitting there, and Maggie pulled the typical Democratic talking points and saying, well, those videos are highly edited.
Yeah, yeah.
So the sitting governor tried to dismiss the validity of those.
The
videos.
validity because that's what the news media was doing. They're saying they're highly edited. Well, the fact of the matter is, everything you see on the news is highly edited.
How ironic is that?
Because if they report on a meeting at the State House,
Yeah.
they're not going to show you the 5-hour meeting or the 3-hour meeting at the State
Of
House,
course.
because nobody would watch it. But they will show you the highlights
Right.
that bring home what they're trying to get across. So everything you see in the news is highly edited, but they tried to dismiss this report about Planned Parenthood because it was quote-unquote highly edited, which is entirely, let me just finish, entirely disingenuous.
Totally.
So that's what she said, and Chris Sununu at that point, to his credit, said, well, Madam Governor, I've seen the entirety of the videos, and I know it was on those. And therefore I cannot vote to support Planned Parenthood.
Right.
And then 6 months later, he's running for governor, and he doesn't want to aggravate the left.
Yes.
So next thing you know, Planned Parenthood is being supported.
It's a
And
problem.
that's when I said, okay, this guy is strictly a political machine, and he has no either he has no vertebrae, or he has no convictions.
Well, that does give you an example of a sole-sourced contract.
Right.
Right. And it sort of sets up the problem that we're having with this whole thing, because many of the smaller women health care, which there are plenty,
Yeah.
by the way, throughout New Hampshire, they will never bid against Planned Parenthood because they don't have the resources to do so.
They don't
and
have the
they
connections.
Won't tell you. We know we're going to lose. Are we going to really spend 45 hours of work paying people to put the bid together, to do all that work to try to be competitive and to get get the bid, get the contract, when you know you're going to not receive it. Planned Parenthood has so much money and power that they won't bid against them. And that's the typical problem that we have to be cognizant of. We should not have a majority of sole-sourced contracts. There are times when you must have that. There are times where that...
if that company's the only thing that
That's
makes that widget, then
Correct.
Therefore you're kind of stuck.
Absolutely. And there's times where that is pertinent, but that should not be the natural course of business happening.
So functionally you're saying that Planned Parenthood's a good example, but basically if you go up there, you're going to start looking into making sure that companies that probably have a really good idea or might do really well,
Yeah,
but just don't have the connections,
indeed. Yes.
get their foot in the door.
Well, you know what? We're supposed to be the watchdogs. The work is voluminous. This is to not, cut
We
anyone
don't
any
use big
slack.
words like that on this
Okay,
show.
I'm sorry. Well, let's
It's a
just
lot
say,
of work.
It's a pile of work.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, it's a pile of work. And I'm not sure that the executive counselors could even keep up with the amount of stuff that comes across those tables. It's immense.
Yeah.
So in their defense, that's a big job. However, I'm a purist. And if that's what you sign on for, then that's what you should do.
Then do your job.
Yeah.
Do your job. Dig in. And I'm sure that there will be pretty, present situations where it would be helpful to have someone, discuss why this situation is the way it is. Why are we doing this? Now, there are some that may not want that to happen, but that's the job of the executive counselor. They're supposed to take their district and indeed beyond their district and make sure that New Hampshire first is what happens.
Does the other angle is the governor is about to appoint a new judge, and I happen to know that the only judges that get appointed are the ones who are connected.
Yeah.
Period. And is there anything as executive council that you could do to try to make sure there's a bigger pool other than the ones that are just absolutely know everybody in Concord?
Yes. I think it's sort of the same thing as the other situation with regard to the contracts, right? I mean, the power machine has sort of been chugging along, business as usual, for a long time. And, I don't know if any one person can come in and make such a huge difference, but wouldn't it be neat to try to have a majority on that council?
Yeah.
That would stand to begin discussion of that situation.
Yeah.
You cannot change it until you identify it.
And you
then
can't-
after you identify, you have to discuss
talk
it
about
and find a
options.
solution.
Well, not just that. You have to have somebody like you who is willing to talk about it.
Indeed.
Okay,
Yeah,
because you got Dave Wheeler,
he's great.
and Kenny,
Yes,
who are both willing to go to bat
yes.
on things that they believe in. They've
Absolutely.
got character.
Absolutely.
And if those two guys get in and you get in, you'd have the majority,
Yes.
and you could actually cause some waves and actually give contracts to people.
We don't want to cause waves. We just
No,
want to do the
you
business
should.
of New Hampshire.
No.
But with those two,
Yes, but if you give contracts
Yes.
to people who are outside the inner sanctum, okay, because they do good work,
Yes.
or they're less expensive,
yes,
you are going to cause waves because those people are used to feeding at the trough of the New Hampshire taxpayers.
it is probably true.
Nepotism is business as usual, whether they admit it or not.
It
And
is.
you're challenging that.
Yes.
That paradigm.
We have to challenge that paradigm because you know
yeah.
what? We're not standing up for the hard-working taxpayer who, by the way, is spending all of the money to make this state run. Because you know what? Let's face it, the rich person, God bless them. And this is not getting into that rich-poor thing. I hate that discussion. It's so silly. But as far as, taxpayers, right, it's the middle class that really is paying the larger percentage of their earnings to state and fed, right? I mean, the lower earning person isn't necessarily has a lot of help.
You are not necessarily correct, at least in this situation. Yeah, because if you look at the in Manchester specifically,
Yeah.
The people paying rent
Yes.
are paying property tax.
Yes, they are.
Not directly,
Yeah.
But part of their rent, the landlord isn't paying the property tax.
Yes. Correct.
So,
Right.
and the thing is your executive council, a lot of the money that goes to taxes in New Hampshire is property tax.
The living taxes are way out of control as far as
Right.
I'm concerned. I mean, whether you rent or own in New Hampshire, property taxes are
Because
stifling.
incomes is that's a federal issue.
indeed. But the truth is if businesses in New Hampshire, I think that there's a lot that we can do in
Yeah.
the executive council to promote New Hampshire businesses, to assist New Hampshire businesses, and to allow the system to work more completely to keep it here in New Hampshire.
I'll give you another example, okay? This one acts absolutely, and I don't know enough about it and maybe I'm completely wrong, all right? But I know that the legislature voted all this new money to help with the opioid crisis,
Yep.
right? Mm-hmm. We have Hope for Recovery down the street here, who had created all these satellite
Yes.
things so people could go in there and start getting help, with a promise that they were going to get more money. Maggie and the executive council, as soon as they started getting this money, gave a contract to a New York company
Wow.
for $1.4 million.
What was the company, do you know?
I don't recall. I'd have to look it up.
To do precisely what for the state?
Fleece it. So
Okay.
it's I mean, you have people in state
Right.
that are there willing to do the job
in state.
in state and come up with a cohesive
it
way to
is.
attack the problem.
Yeah.
But no, they have to hire some schmuck from,
We see it a lot,
and you
though.
call them schmucks. If they're from
Yeah.
New York, they're legally schmucks,
It's
right?
okay.
Oh, is that?
I think
Really?
so, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a,
It's all right.
I'm a little bit
I'm not
less-
offended.
I'm not passionate about anything.
No,
but
well,
I'm too.
You're making good examples for the case of why we need to start paying attention.
Yes.
Because we need to do a better job of taking care of New Hampshire and New Hampshire citizens and understanding that the work that we're doing here is important. As far as I'm concerned, the judges,
Right.
the appointment of judges and chiefs and heads of departments and everything, hugely important.
Wicked important.
Hugely important. I mean, we have to be able to put people and support people that will support our Constitution. That won't go around
Whoa,
our-
that's radical, Jane. I don't
know.
know.
I like our New Hampshire State Constitution.
It's
and-
awesome.
I know, it is, and we need to start following it.
We do, because we get judges will pass bills in the New Hampshire House that have an absolute clear intent. And the New Hampshire judicial system will deliberately
Yep.
rule against what we intended.
Yes.
Knowingly
Yep.
rule against it.
Yeah. It
No.
even happens where they won't even take cases where they know that, let's say, a law is not constitutional, right? I mean, and they shouldn't be doing that. These justices are passing on cases because they know it's not constitutional, but it's a law here in New Hampshire.
so why would you want decision makers appointed performing important tasks like that are going to just be slavishly bound by such an archaic document? My heavens.
I know. Ouch. Well,
Outdated.
You're
I mean,
fired.
if you say
The devil is now
that.
advocating.
You can't
So-
advocate that. No, I mean the truth is we're
No,
we have nothing but that document to keep us on the right path to serve this state. And the further we get awry from that, the more trouble we seem to get into. I don't know why we can't follow the easy lesson. Because it's pretty basic.
I'd like to comment
I
on.
wanted our listening
know,
and
I know.
watching audience
I
to
know
hear that
you-
statement.
I know you
because
doesn't.
when you are running for that office, your opponents are obviously going to challenge you on those grounds,
Yeah.
and it's important to know that for your voters to know that you have an answer to that question.
There's a really important point to that, too, though, is that the left will say it's a 200-year-old document, and therefore it's kind of archaic and out of time.
Yeah, out of step with us.
What would be, if they could possibly understand, the voters understand, is that archaic document was a document that was based on human nature. Okay, the entire document is an understanding of human nature and the role of government as how it deals with the citizens.
Absolutely.
Human nature has not changed in 200 years.
And it never will.
It doesn't change. It is what it is.
Right. Well, when you start to have the mindset that government will be the person, not the person, but the entity to solve all of these issues, we're going to be in trouble, because government cannot solve those issues. Those issues go right back to the smallest, and this is what the founders knew. They knew that it was the folks. It was the folks that were most important. Morality, for lack of a better word, is why we keep getting it wrong. I mean, the further we go from a moral stance, the further away from the Constitution we get. It was a moral document at the time that it was written.
Article 6, New Hampshire Constitution, morality and piety being necessary.
Piety, too. I'm sorry. I knew morality was in there, but I didn't know piety was in there.
That's the title of the 6th Amendment to the
Wow,
New
is
Hampshire
that-
Constitution, is morality and piety.
I mean, how archaic
Do you know what
is that?
piety means?
Of course.
What?
I'm going to start a
To
bakery.
be humble.
It means reverence for God and family.
Oh, well, okay. It does. All right. I always thought it was just to be very humble.
No,
And, no.
pious, that's pious, is what you're thinking of. No, piety is a reverence for God and family. So,
Wow.
so
Don't tell them.
no, I know, the 6th, if you, actually, it was just amended in 68, I think. And before that, before it was amended, it said morality, and I'm paraphrasing because I'm not that, my memory ain't
The
much
Constitution was
great.
amended, or the dictionary
Constitution.
definition of
No, the
potato?
Constitution
Okay.
was amended.
Okay.
So prior to 68, which isn't that long ago, it said morality and piety being necessary for the true subjugation of the people. Therefore, basically, we should apply evangelical principles and hire teachers and educators like that to make sure that basically the whole idea was that if we don't teach the kids morality, piety, and reverence for God and family, then your citizenship isn't going to be capable of being being able to govern the government.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the citizens are supposed to be in charge, but if
Correct.
they don't know the basics, they're
And one only has to look around to see the fruition of that.
Yeah.
Because
That's true.
that's why we're going in the wrong direction, and all of it can point to that. The family is, I think, the microcosm that really is damaged.
oh
We've
yeah,
been so
super
damaged,
bad.
and to the point where now other entities are taking up the spot, and they're not doing a very good job, because obviously they can't, right? I mean, but
They pretend they can, but
Yeah, they
Big
sure
Brother
do.
will not be able to manage to replace
No.
the family.
No, if
No
you
chance.
if you destroy a child, government intercedes to make sure they don't get too far out of control, and then sometimes puts them in jail because they get way out of control. So as the family has broken down, government has grown and grown to compensate for the lack of the family.
and yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I don't think it's healthy. I think it's going to be a real problem for fostering our states and even our country in the direction that will offer the individual the ability to be whatever they want to be. It cuts right down deep into that level.
Yeah.
When you have that monster government pushing down, you know.
Well, it's a self-feeding devil.
Yeah.
Because as government has changed the rules and done things to help facilitate the breakdown of the family, government has to grow to maintain control.
Absolutely.
And then therefore you lose more control, and government has to grow further. Now we have to get rid of our guns.
Yes.
We have to get rid of our guns, Jane.
Yeah, sorry.
I like the way that you conflate the words, which means make the same, by the way, folks. The words conservative and responsible. I mean, it's even in the language of the charter that
Yes.
defines the role of the
Isn't
executive
that
council.
fun? I mean, what better wording?
Conservative and responsible.
Right.
Now, who should be running things at the government level? Grown-ups, perhaps?
Yes,
What is a characteristic of grown-ups? They tend to be responsible.
hopefully.
So, I mean,
me.
all you're proposing is that, hey, put me in one of those 5 chairs because I'm going to be responsible with your money and not pretend it's ours to
Right.
to
Do with as we please.
do as we please and
Absolutely.
waste and
Yeah.
feather
You
the
know,
nests of our buddies.
I'm not sure, so we'll put along this little narrative, I mean, I'm the last of 8 kids, and very extended family, right? And I was the first one to go to college, and, money was never we had enough to get by, but, we weren't wealthy or anything. I really think it's quite abominable how the majority of our politicians, and I do believe it's the majority, that do not understand that those people that we deserve to keep as much of our hard-earned funds, our hard-earned money as we can. And when we give some of that up to the government, that government should be spending that money properly and effectively.
As prudently as possible.
Absolutely, because it is not their money.
No.
Right.
It's not their money, and those people that gave that money worked hard for that money. So I have a real, the dog in the race for me is, I know it sounds simplistic, but I'm horrified when I see how we misspend money and how we can make this wonderful budget, and then we can play the shell game, and we could start, doing this and moving this there, and we'll have another highway, tax, or we'll do another
Well, they almost
toll
did that
tax.
today.
It's nuts. It's never enough, and it's never enough because we do not respect the little guy giving that money to the taxes. That money should be respected.
I heard on the House floor today, you're going to love this, right? There is a bill to change, so when you register your car, you pay X number of dollars for how many miles you've put on. Wait, no, let's...
Who does this?
Okay,
What is this, a new surcharge they're proposing? or
No,
something?
it's a new surcharge. The reason is, it's not illogical. The reason is...
It's a use tax, wear and tear tax, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Because what the government isn't able to capture is the use of the roads by electric vehicles, because they don't pay the gas tax.
Oh my gosh.
So they're trying to capture them. But that's I get that. I voted against it, but I get it. But a Democrat got up I think it was a Democrat, got up on the House of the floor and says, there are people who are using these electric cars that want to pay taxes, and this is a vehicle for them to do so. I go, come on! What? I started.
That's shocking.
I laughed so
You
hard.
want to know what's great? Is those sessions are taped,
Yeah.
and I hope
on.
in the fall that the opponent of that particular representative is able to get a hold of that
beautiful.
tape.
It was just so funny.
Yeah, I wish people would do more of that.
Yeah.
I know that in my committee, I sat next to a Democrat. You know what, and I hate using Democrat, Republican, because I think it doesn't matter anymore.
It doesn't.
I so don't care about party anymore.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter. You have progressives, and you have conservatives, and you have, whatever, right? But
Flaky libertarians.
Yeah, libertarians. They can go either way, though, sometimes. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes I agree with them wholeheartedly, and then sometimes they go toward anarchy a little bit, and it makes me like, well, I don't think I can go quite that far.
Yeah, makes me a little nervous.
There has
too.
to be a little bit of, structure. But in any case,
Well, small sound government is a good thing.
and that's where I am. Yeah. So this man actually got up and had himself a little speech, actually saying it is the role of government to legislate behavior.
Oh, really?
Absolutely said that. And he was sitting next to me, and I almost fell off my chair. And I looked around at like the 14 other people sitting in that committee, and I was like, I couldn't believe how little anybody said. I literally spoke out of turn, which in committee you're not supposed to do, right? I said, did you just say that?
Right.
And he doubled down. He doubled down. That's not the role of government. Sorry, folks. You totally missed that turn off. And I don't know that normal people actually know that anymore. I think that they so believe, well, we need the government to fix this.
Well, they lie. The thing is, the media lies so much, it's hard for them to know what is true anymore.
We got to get the information to them.
Nobody has a baseline of understanding of American civics, for sure.
No, for now they
That's
don't,
not
you're
taught in the
right.
public schools. Thank goodness for institutions like the Founders Academy,
Yep.
And others. And then they come up with the progressive line, which is really, truly a doctrine. It's almost comparable to a religious doctrine, and it's a huge departure from the constitutional basics that we are talking about here today.
Absolutely.
And that's why you get statements like that in places like that.
You're absolutely right. It's all connected. It's a big monster is what it is. It's a big progressive monster. I like to think of it as the monster. And let's face it, you get one of those 5 seats by yourself, you're one of 5. but you get one of those seats with two proven conservatives,
You can actually cause some trouble.
and you can
Two proven
actually-
grown-ups.
Two proven grown-ups, yeah.
Hey, so you are a big Second Amendment
Yes.
Proponent.
Yes.
You spoke at the Women's Defense League rally at the State House it was a couple of weeks ago or a
Yeah,
week ago.
about
Yeah.
2 or 3 weeks ago, yeah.
And you did a great job. But my question is, I mean, I like that about you, but does that ever come into play as an executive counselor?
Judges?
Oh, yeah, okay.
You want to have a
was
judge
trying to
that's
figure
not
where the
pro
nexus
Second
was.
Amendment, 2A in our Constitution is very, very clear on where the guns,
Right.
we have the right. And it's a natural right, and the government has no say in it. It's a natural right to protect ourselves. And I don't think anybody wants to have a judge sitting on our court that is anti-Second Amendment. Not
That
in
is
New
a-
Hampshire.
Okay.
That's a rabbit hole I'm tempted to try to go down, but I don't know if we have the
Go.
time.
We got time.
But there's weapons and there's weapons and there's weapons, obviously, in the ballistics category. You know, some are being demonized more than others. Some are
Totally.
being treated as if they're somehow don't belong in the hands of citizens, and whereas others would. You know, Joe Biden himself said, "You want to protect your home, your family, get a shotgun."
Yeah.
You know, AR-15.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
What a guy.
So, I mean, you know, they're demonizing certain weapons because of their destructive capabilities and their capacity and all that kind of thing. So, if you're deliberating as an executive counselor on the question of judges, and you come across one that buys into the notion that there are certain firearms that really ought not to end up in the hands of a private citizen, what do you do with that? What's the line of questioning to ferret out whether that person is actually supportive of the 2A, the way it's written, or the way it's being represented?
So, let's say that you're like myself, and you're 100% will do everything you possibly can to support guns and citizenry, right?
Yep.
And that comes up. So now here's an opportunity, in my mind, to make it very clear, as clear as you possibly can, where this supposed or possible judge would sit on the issue or stand on the issue. And take that as an educational opportunity for the folks to be able to see what's going on. And then you vote. And then you vote.
You know, you can.
And you vote no. And you vote no because I stand up for the Second Amendment, and it was clear from the questions that we asked, and it was clear from the vetting, that there are serious issues with your stance. And personally, my vote for District 4, I can do nothing else but. And,
Yeah.
and it's clear.
It's a pretty simple question. All you have to do is ask, because if you ask a liberal, why do we have the Second Amendment? Instead of asking them, a liberal will tell you, well, originally it was so you could go hunting.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
A conservative will tell you hunting has nothing to do with it. It's about maintaining the balance of power in the hands of the people. And that's how you'd know you have a good judge, because
You
they're
probably would, yeah. You have to flesh it out, though. I think
Yeah.
it would be your responsibility, if you're going to ask questions, to make sure that you're as complete as possible to be able to demonstrate why you were going to vote no or yes, right? So,
If you want, when you're doing, I can come. Me and Eric can come in and try to rattle them.
oh,
Yeah.
okay. I'll keep
While
that.
you're
in
at-
mind.
Come dressed as a standing militia, just for,
That'll drive him
just
crazy.
for kicks.
Kilts. we'll wear kilts.
Well,
and
then we'll just be
AR-15s.
holding claymores. That doesn't.
Oh, my.
Uh,
You don't run out of bullets.
Right. We're just there to help.
Doesn't matter.
Yes,
We're
thank
there
you.
to
We're
help.
the
Oh, my
IRS. We're here
goodness.
to help.
Oh, the IRA or the IRS?
No, government. How about government in general?
Don't go down that road, son. Jane, it's a delight to know that somebody of your moral stance and also of your fluency in American government is running for one of these seats, because too rarely do we hear from somebody who understands the role of that august council, which is a rare fixture in state government,
Totally.
as well as the proper execution of the state constitution.
Yeah, 'cause
so we're pleased that you're
Well,
running
thank you
for the
very
seat.
much.
So thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
because the people in New Hampshire were so upset because the governor of New Hampshire had been abusing his power for so long. When they came up with the Constitution, they created the weakest governor, I believe, in the country.
Shh, don't say that.
It is absolutely the weak one, the weakest, or at least second. as far as actual power.
I think it's considered to be, I think, anyway, from the number one.
Yeah.
Because without the council, a lot of that can be curtailed. A lot of that, whatever that specific person would want to do.
So the governor's prerogatives were totally subject to the council's
That's how they
up or
did it.
down vote.
That's how they did it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's an awesome thing.
Why not our border states here in New England? Why would they not have had that? This is just a little trivia history question, but I'm curious.
Let me see.
Anybody know?
I think so.
I
okay.
think that when we broke off
Maine or
into
Vermont or whatever.
Yeah, I think when we broke off from Massachusetts,
Sure.
it was first, from what I understand, the King of England was the first person to say that we needed to have that. And there weren't even people that wanted to run for the seats. They so hated, of course, the King, and felt that it was just going to be used to somehow abuse them. But when they got together, when these freedom lovers got together, said, you know what, but if we don't fill those seats with us, then we're going to get the King's bidding. And that's what happened. They came out and they did, and they voted against the King things all over the place. Whatever he was ordaining or putting through the pipeline, they were voting out all the time. That's how it started. I mean, you talk about a rebel, hands-on council. I think that's so awesome.
What a great safety valve.
No kidding. And
Well,
it was there first to help.
Yeah, well, that was part of the problem, is the King would appoint the governor or whatever you want to
Sure.
call it, and the legislature would be all over him like a cheap suit, and then he just dissolved the legislature and do what he wanted. There was actually a case.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Wonder what a cheap suit looked like back then.
There was one cool case, and I don't remember. I wish I could remember the name. It was on the seacoast, where the governor was so upset with one of these activists that he took his property
Oh my
and then tried to sell it.
Gee,
But
really?
oh yes. But here's the cool part. Back then, people remember this morality and piety that was ingrained in the citizens back then.
Yeah.
Nobody would bid on it.
Awesome.
Okay,
Yes.
so the governor took the guy's property.
So they boycotted
and
the-
they
the
boycotted it. Whereas today, if somebody took my property
Yeah.
and the governor says I'll sell it to you for $100, there'd be a stampede to get it. You know what I mean? It's just a completely different character now.
Yeah.
I mean, it was also, I live in the big city of Ware, and we actually had the Pine Tree riots.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Way before the revolution.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't say way, I don't know how many years before,
Oh,
but
it was
before the
before.
revolution,
14.
the
Really?
the governor would have basically the king's trees or whatever,
Correct.
and they were labeled or marked so many because if you look around, you'll see a lot of the roads around here are called Mast Road. Right, Mast Road was
Okay.
because those are the roads they took the mast down on,
my
because
gosh.
the really good
The
sturdy
circumference
trees.
of the trees were big enough to be a mast on a ship.
Yeah, and the governor got those, and if you cut those down, you got in trouble.
Yeah.
Well, the guys in Ware weren't too happy about that, and there was some other stuff they were trying to tax or something, and they went up to this near the center of Ware, and were telling the tax collector, and I think they bobbed the tail off the horses.
Yeah, I'm mad at those guys because they did harm the horse. The
And,
guy's-
and
the
then
guy's
and
horse.
then and then they tarred and feathered the king's men and the
tax
governor's
collectors.
tax collectors and sent them out of town.
Yeah.
It was pretty brutal, but they made their point.
Yeah, certainly.
And they were barely consequenced in the aftermath.
Really?
They were just slap on the wrist.
Wow.
Because everybody knew the fix was in and that it was unfair.
Yeah, absolutely, I'm
So.
sure. Well, it's kind of fun, we have this vestige of an honorable council. And I just can't help but wonder how cool it would be to have three people that weren't afraid to do the right thing. How that could make a change.
It could make a great change.
New Hampshire's so unique, and it's
is.
such an honor and a joy to be a part of the process in New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
And Executive Council, no different from the legislature, which is
Absolutely.
huge.
Yeah.
But good luck to you.
Thank you. You excited?
So No, the way you said that, it was like the show
Yeah, it
was
sounded
over.
like it was the end of the show.
What's going
And
on?
we're back.
And we're back.
Now that we've established that Jane's got luck.
So you were in the legislature for a couple of years.
Couple of years.
And you got your feet wet as far as what goes on in Concord.
Yep.
Then where did you go from there?
Well, I ran for Senate, remember, against Dave Booton
Yeah.
in 14.
Yeah, it was close though.
400 votes. Yeah. And you know that we had, God bless us, we had $19,000 against $190,000.
And you were
Wow.
enlisted by 400 votes
Yes,
out
and
of what,
brand
12,000
new territory. Yes, because I had been up in the Lakes region. I had won my seat in Alton in the Lakes region. We were there like 12 years, 9 years, 12, I forget now. And so that was my territory. And I had come out of no politics at all. I jumped in. I was literally just a singer, or an opera singer.
I wouldn't say just.
Well, you know, that's what I was doing. And do you know who actually put me on the road to become a politician? You know, you talk about weird. So one day at church, this woman comes up to me and she says, "Oh, I have to take voice lessons. I love your voice. Will you teach me to sing?" I said, "Sure. You know, come on over." She came over to my house, and you know who it was?
No.
Susan DeLamas.
No way.
Yeah.
How long did she take lessons with you?
Oh, 4 years. We're best friends.
Oh,
But
yeah.
Susan would come over. Now, Susan was in the house at the time.
Sure.
And, you know, she'd tell me these stories, and I was always conservative. So, you know, I was like, "Susan, are you kidding me?" And, "Oh, yeah, Jane." And so I started paying attention and going to selectmen meetings and, you know, in my community. And I was horrified. I was like, "You guys are lying all over the place. How can you do that?" And so there was a gentleman there that was a Republican that keeps winning, and, you know, an incumbent, and just a lying liar who lied. I'm sorry. And I thought, I'm going to primary him. And I did. And I won by 70% of the vote.
Wow. So everybody else
huge.
kind of knew.
Yeah.
And this is incumbency that you beat by
Yes.
70%.
Yes.
Wow.
That's a
So
big deal.
when we moved, my son wanted to go to Pinkerton Academy. He wanted to go to a big school. We were living in Alton, and I had a voice studio here in Concord, or Concord and Manchester. We wanted to get closer to Manchester, and he wanted to go to Pinkerton. So we said, okay, well, let's move to Hooksett. So we moved to Hooksett, and then the time to look at re-election and stuff happened. I was going to have to change, you know,
Districts, obviously.
anyway, right?
Yeah.
And somebody said, you know, we should primary Booton. And I said, well, I'm in Hooksett. I'll do it.
I'll do it.
So we had a really, it was pretty contentious out there.
I'll bet.
Yeah,
Senate
people
races
have
can
no
be
idea.
really tough. And they get paid so much. I understand why you ran for the
Yes,
for the
well,
seat.
tell me about it. It was all my
Yeah, if
riches
you
that-
run for executive council, she actually makes money.
Yeah, they pay something, huh?
$5,000 a year, I think, right?
I think it's more than that. But tell you the truth, I don't really know, but I think it's more than 5. But you do get paid a little bit to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I reflect on how ironic it is. I live in Nashua. It's a border city, obviously, and 5 miles to the south of my house, I happen to know the rep that covers that district. You know, so that would have been my counterpart,
Yeah.
who makes $90,000 a year,
Isn't that
doing
amazing?
the same job
Absolutely.
As you did for $100
as
a
I
year.
did for $100 a year. Yeah.
He's a lot smarter than you, obviously.
Apparently.
No,
Yeah.
sir. That has nothing to do with it. I personally think to serve, everybody's like, oh, you know, 400 people, you know, whatever it is, that's too much. Well, I think that's a lot of hooey. I think
is.
that's a lot of hooey. I think that
Better representation.
it is. And,
Theoretically.
well, listen, you can go to get your rep at any time.
Hold them accountable, sure.
No, well, not only that, it's better than that. It has its pluses and minuses, but one of the plus parts is with 400 state representatives, okay, Governor Sununu currently is trying to get through Marcy's law. Well, you have 400 state reps.
Right. Makes
That
it hard.
millionaire, whoever's funding this BS, can't afford to pay 400 state reps. I guess he could probably.
Well, that is that. No, but you're right.
But
I mean,
in effect,
that's
when
what it
you have
does.
when you have bills like that, where there's so many people that have to support it, it's really hard to buy the New Hampshire legislature because there's so many people, and they need so little money to get into office. Like, you know,
and anyone
The
can run.
lobbyists, the professional lobbyists, most of whom work for law firms, mostly leave the reps alone. You may have noticed when you were in the House.
Yeah,
I
'cause-
did too.
Yeah.
They suck up to the senators big
Wicked.
time.
Oh, yeah,
Wicked.
they're all over the senators.
Yeah.
Chairmen and senators are the only ones they actually spend a lot of time with.
Strategic.
Oh yeah, it's pretty. It's
That's
pretty
where it is.
obvious.
That's where the action is
yeah.
in that regard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sad, but true. But so I did have a number of people for this. My 3-year stint after the election didn't go my way in 2014.
Didn't
New
go
Hampshire.
the people's way.
Well, yeah, I guess. Okay. There were some folks that asked if I would take on presidency of New Hampshire Right to Life, which I did for 3 years, and
Yeah.
my term ended in December.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So at that point, a lot of people were asking me to run for the state Senate seat again, because they said, now people know you now, and you're in the community, and you probably win. So, and then somebody said, well, why don't you run for executive council? And I thought I shushed that, by reflex, but then I started to read about what it did, and I thought, wow, this is so cool.
It's a potent thing to do.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, just think what could happen. Dave Wheeler is, I think, one of maybe the 3 most honorable conservatives the state has ever seen.
He's my guy, too.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Constituent service is awesome. He's a good man. And you have Joe Kenny, who I was very active in his campaign when I was up in Alton
Yeah.
for his first win. And Alton came in big for Joe Kenny. So, now we have those two, and, they're incumbents. One would assume they're probably going to.
Yeah, we're gonna see. I think that the news media wants to convince you that this is going to be a landslide victory for Democrats,
Big
but
blue sweep.
I think that is a total load of BS. You know why? Because I think most people see through the constant crap.
Oh, I think they're starting to, absolutely.
big time, big
Absolutely.
Which doesn't mean that we can allow ourselves to get complacent
No.
at all,
No.
especially
No.
at election time.
No, but I mean, if you look at what's happened to Trump for the last year, every time they attack him, if you've ever played chess or warfare, anything, the best defense is a good offense. You should always attack if you possibly can,
Right.
because it's better if they're playing defense, then they can't attack you.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
And that's what the Democrats in bed with the media is doing.
Have been doing, yeah.
They have just constantly attacked him, and almost all the attacks have had zero,
Yep.
if any, validity at all.
Yeah, they haven't stuck.
They
keep trying.
They keep trying different things, and like this latest one was the connection between Facebook and this company that data mined a bunch of thing, and they're making it out like it's some sort of criminal activity.
Right.
When it never was criminal activity, and when Obama did exactly the same thing.
He was a genius.
He was a genius.
Yes.
He's brilliant, right? So Obama's brilliant for data mining and getting all this information on voters and using it to his advantage, but Trump is somehow nefarious.
Yes.
But I think people are starting to wake up and see how much
I agree. I agree with you. I mean, let's face it, if we can make our case, I believe it comes really down, it's very simple, and personally, I think there's probably going to be a big onslaught later maybe than sooner, because most people do know about the fact that I'll stand my ground. I will. You're not pushing me off what I believe. You just can't do it.
Right.
And that's a bad thing for some.
Yes.
So, I had to have a real talk with myself and talk with others and say some prayers and say, is this something we should do? Because, there'll be.
Yeah, you got to have pretty thick skin.
Yeah, I got a thick skin.
It's really tough though to have really thick skin, right?
This is going to be good.
No, I'm actually being serious.
Oh, okay.
To have really thick skin and still be kind and gentle at the same time.
Maintain professionalism.
It seems
and all that.
antithetical. But you know what the truth is, Gary? If you know a lot of, when we say good people, kind people, giving people,
Yeah.
people that would fight for the little guy, for lack of a better term, they all have thick skin. But you know why? Because they know who's in charge.
Right. Right.
Go ahead, give it your best shot. Hello? You know, I mean, and in some ways, that's sort of how I feel about this. You know, I'm going to give it everything I have. We're going to put on a good campaign, and we're going to educate, and we're going to talk to people, and we're going to explain why it's important that you're paying attention.
Right.
At the end of the day, it will be what it will be.
Yes.
And the sun will come up the next day, and I know I'll have my ethics intact, yay or nay.
Right.
So why should my skin not be thick?
Right.
It is what it is.
No, I'm just saying thick as in typically in this situation, you will be accused of things you never did.
Right.
You will be
Words will be twisted, misinterpreted, misrepresented.
everything that you've said will be twisted and perverted, and it will be pretty relentless because the opponents of you also know that if you're elected, you're going to do the right thing, and that's not what they want.
Yes.
Undo their agenda, and they know that the scale's going to tip, and you'll be in the majority.
Right.
And they don't want to let that happen.
I bet
It's a
most
fight.
like
It's okay.
for instance, one of the groups that's going to be against you is Planned Parenthood.
Goodness.
I don't think most people know that Planned Parenthood is currently is actively trying to take away people's Second Amendment rights. It is the
Surprised.
infrastructure for Planned Parenthood and money from Planned Parenthood
Yes.
that is financing this walkout of schools for
Yeah.
kids who don't really understand the issue
Yeah.
on school violence
Yeah.
and all this other stuff. Planned Parenthood is not only killing the unborn, they're also trying to kill your Second Amendment rights.
Absolutely. Well, they're progressive first, and they're one of the most. If people knew how powerful that organization was politically, they would not believe it. It's hugely powerful in the political realm, Planned
Yep.
Parenthood, and that's why it can go over its own ethic. You know, it can go over its own. It's supposed to be about women's health care, right? It can jump into gun rights because it's got so much political clout. It's huge. The money flowing within Planned Parenthood is just vast. Federal, state, you have people the progressives that have linked it with the progressive agenda, and that's going to continue for a while. But who knows?
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Jane,
Yes.
I love you.
I love
Hey,
you too, Gary.
Thank you very much for coming on.
Jane,
Eric,
I love your watch.
You do. Thank you. This is such a cool little watch. I love
It's
this.
very blingy. I don't know,
It's
Paul, we
Betsy-
don't have a lot of time, but if you can pull in on that watch.
Betsy Johnson. I love it.
Just tell the world that it's very blingy and very sweet.
Thank you.
Yes.
Betsy, what?
Betsy Johnson's
Betsy
a designer.
Johnson. Yes.
Yes. All
What's
right.
that mean?
Very good.
She does glitzy pieces. She's fun.
I have no idea who that is.
She's just a jewelry designer.
Oh,
She does pocketbooks too.
It's a fun watch.
it's funny. I never bought a pocketbook either.
No, you wouldn't.
Really?
No.
Oh, I
Hey.
could indoctrinate you into
Well,
that
see-
club.
Along with the skirt.
Dude, let's
Right.
go shopping
Let's
first.
go shopping. Hey, we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for joining us, and best of luck tonight.